Hello, I'm Andy Robertson. I'm a video game journalist for about 20 years, and I'm here to talk to you about the Family Gaming Database and our long road to accessible game discovery. So, the database started off the back of a book I wrote called Taming Gaming that was aimed to help parents gain confidence with making choices and discovering games for their family and taking kind of an engaged role in that process. And so we wanted to help parents, guardians, and carers find great games for their children. So to support the book, we created this searchable database. And right from the start, we had a desire to aid discovery of games that matched any particular family's tastes, requirements, and barriers. And we soon realised that to follow through on this vision, we needed to try and include all families of all shapes and sizes. And that meant that we really needed to provide full accessibility information on every game in our database. We launched with a set of accessibility tags that were grouped by functional area rather than disability, so that users of the database can pick and mix the particular barriers or a particular requirement that they're looking for games to match. And they were focused on design rather than just having accessibility items in the menu. So that rather than just trying to detail, well, what settings does this game have, we wanted to say, well, what is the user experience this game has? And it was from the perspective of search. So if you're looking for a game that overcame the barrier of maybe not being able to hear the spoken narrative, then if that game provided subtitles, that was one bit of data. Obviously, those subtitles needed to be of a good size and a good contrast. But equally, we knew that if you were searching for games to avoid that barrier, you could also include games that just didn't have any spoken narrative. And so we'd include those as well in that particular search tag, so that we were trying to think about, well, is this the sort of game that someone who has that particular requirement would want to see returned in the search? So I thought it would be good just to have a little look at, what we've got in the database now. So as you can see here in this screenshot for the game Lost in Play, we have this set of boxes at the top, looking at content rating, skill level, cost, online play, and the last box on the right there is accessibility. And this is a new feature on the database that sort of pulls together the data, looks at a particular game, what's the percentage of tags it's got in a particular area, so we can say its strongest in controls and getting started, those two areas. You can then click on that accessibility box, and that takes you down to the Lost in Play accessibility report, as you can see here, which provides an overview of what sort of accessibility the game offers, which are the areas we've got data for. And then as you go down the page, each of the different sections, any tags that game has are displayed in that grouping. And then in one of these sections, you'll see at the bottom here, it says similar games with more accessibility features for visual. And so the current game you're looking at has a certain number of items for visual accessibility. But we also know from the data in the database that there's maybe 20 or 30 similar games that we've marked to the one we're looking at, Lost in Play. We can look at those games' accessibility and say, in the visual section, are there examples of similar games that have more accessibility tags marked in those sections, to give you an opportunity to say, if you like this style of game, maybe there's not enough accessibility in this area for you, then these other games are a good place to start. And if you're looking for a game, so we're seeing the Family Gaming Database search screen, and you start by making choices for your family, which might be age rating, it might be genre, style of play, and as you can see here, we've selected Nintendo Switch, and we want to play with 4 or more players. You can then click on the accessibility filter section, which opens up, and as you can see here, we're looking at some controls, difficulty, and getting started accessibility. And again, you can select your items in here to expand that search to only include games that meet the criteria you select. But it is a long journey, and one we don't always get right, and I think wanting to be open about mistakes and learn from them has kind of been an experience from the beginning. And a case in point I wanted to share was Biomutant, where early on in our process, this game, through our own error, was marked as playable without sight. Now, people in the community, not surprisingly, saw that data, got excited about the game, purchased the game, And so I remember waking up, going onto Twitter, oh, what's happening? Oh no, what have we done? And the real disappointment in ourselves, and for what we wanted to provide of offering inaccurate information. And so trying to figure out what happened, talking to the community, learning and listening, and trying to make that right, obviously by correcting our data, but also offering to cover the cost if some individuals had bought the game based on our mistake, and then moving forward. And actually that turned into a much deeper understanding for us of visual accessibility and some paid consultancy, where again we improved that area. And it does take sort of persistence and that long-term view if you're going to progress, and it is a challenge, but one we're excited about taking on. And taking on that challenge has been hugely helped by the support of partners with the database. We had an amazing grant from the Carina Fund that really helped us expand our ambitions for the database. We had some great funding from the Playability Initiative to get word out about accessibility very early on. And then more recently with Xbox, we worked on expanding our ability to provide information about the default buttons required to play a game. So we added a new section, as you can see here, where we're looking at Halo Infinite, and it goes into detail about which buttons you need to press here in the driving section, which ones of those are essential, which ones of those are optional, and then any notes about, settings that might turn required buttons into optional buttons. So that's useful if you're setting up an accessibility adaptive controller or some similar peripheral. But also we're excited that it was also useful for Xbox setting up at Gamescom and setting up those booths. And further to that, the real kind of the highlight of that for us was then them being able to hand out our card with a link to information about those games. It was not only accurate and included that extra button detail, but was kind of early in the stage of development, and so was kind of a good set of data to make those informed choices on which games to get excited about, and you could go away with that from the booth. We also have been working more recently with PlayStation and their support on expanding how many PlayStation games on the database that have got accessibility data. So we're over 600 now, as you can see. And then along with that, highlighting some lesser known features in accessibility on the PlayStation system, in particular activity cards, which we've been highlighting as really useful in terms of like reducing cognitive load, offering repeatable tutorials, and really signposting in a contextual way, how to progress in a game, which can be useful for all sorts of reasons. This support enables us to continue this accelerated growth of our accessibility data. And as you can see, I've put this graph on the screen. Up on the left axis, we've got how many tags we've got, and approaching 25,000 as we move through time on the bottom axis. But there are a few points here I wanted to pull out, particularly this point of inflection about halfway, where really the progress is trailing off, and we had to find a way to work more collaboratively to get this data in. And that is the point when we introduced the accessibility questionnaire that we could then send to developers. They could complete the data and then update their report on the accessibility data set themselves, providing useful information. But what I loved about this was the conversations that we had as we went through these questionnaires with them. They would come up with ideas of quick wins of things that they could change in their game or add to their game if it was early into development of accessibility features. The result is that our data's improved, but also some games are improved as well. As you can see, I've put a tweet up here from Matt on Severed Steel, who kindly thanks us for this process of going through the accessibility questionnaire, but interestingly talks about how the questionnaire inspired some ideas for Severed Steel, like the option to disable explosion screen shake. And for us, there's some real gold dust there, that it's a real kind of win-win situation. The other exciting thing about running the database is that sheer appetite from families who are super keen to use this data to discover games that are a great fit for them and their children. As you can see from this graph, on the left axis of how many weekly visitors we see, which peaks at around 600,000. The graph is continuing to grow as we move through time, sort of greater and greater. We get some peaks at Christmas and some troughs, but that general trend is up, and we see around 1.5 million visits every month. We've now got 24,000 bits of information of accessibility data that's being used by those visitors. We've got 1,273 games with accessibility data and 240 different tags across now video games and also board games that we're working on as well. So it's exciting to see what we're creating not only grow in terms of the size of data, but in how it's been used and how it's helping real families find games that are a great fit. So, we continue towards that mission of every game on the Family Gaming Database having a really good, strong accessibility report. But beyond that, we would really like every game on any storefront, anywhere, to have this kind of accessibility report, so that users can make those kind of informed decisions. And it's so exciting to see storefronts like Xbox and PlayStation having their tags and making such huge progress. And we're learning and sort of cross-checking with them and their data to sort of make sure that we're up to date. And this has been helpful in clarifying what it is that we're bringing to the party in terms of accessibility. And we've realised that part of what is on offer at the Family Gaming Database is the fact that we can be proactive, that we go out looking for this data. We're not waiting for publishers to do it themselves. We collaborate with publishers and developers. But because of that, we're in a position potentially to scale, to not only cover all the games in the database, but should the opportunity arise, to actually say, well, we could proactively figure out that accessibility data for kind of any video game. But to deliver that, we needed to find a partner who was an expert in scaling this sort of data. And we're excited to announce today we found that in a partnership we've developed with Gamerpedia, who have over 100 experts working full-time analysing games. They are amazing at distilling the experience of a game down into a data set. That they've been doing that for over 15 years. We've worked with them testing this process of applying this knowledge and lived experience of accessibility to look at the possibility of expanding our data and scaling it, and are now in a position to say, yes, this is viable, having had an extensive training program with their experts. Developing this offering with them has not only enhanced the data and accuracy on the Family Gaming Database, but it means we can now offer a product commercially for any store, any website, anywhere that wants to provide accurate accessibility data for all the games on their particular customer offering. We could now enter into a partnership and deliver that at scale. This work evolved over a long conversation between myself and Frode, CEO founder of Gamerpedia. And I wanted to give him a chance just to talk about how Gamerpedia see this collaboration and the importance of accessibility for them.
When I started Gamerpedia, I had a clear mission. I want to make it easier for everyone to find the games they want to play. As someone who has suffered with chronic illness my entire life, I know the power that lies within games to level up my life. And just like it leveled up my life, we want to level up everyone's lives with the positive power of games. That's why we're so excited about this partnership with the Family Gaming Database to bring accessibility data for games to a wider audience and to build that competency within our organization and help spread awareness in the gaming industry at large.
So that is hugely exciting in terms of us moving towards this goal of having accurate, searchable accessibility data for every game, not only on the Family Gaming Database, but for every game a customer may want to look at and understand in terms of what the fit is for them and their experience. So I hope that has been useful. We've covered lots of things there, but to give you a taste of where we've been, the Family Gaming Database, how much we've benefited from conversations and generosity from the accessibility community, and so many people have been generous with their time, their expertise, their wisdom, and that has created this base of accessibility tags and information, and this system that is now starting to grow and really build momentum. And our hope is that means that many, many more people are going to discover games that are appropriate for them, that are accessible to them, that are approachable to them, and match their needs across a whole range of requirements. So I hope that's been useful. I really thanks for your time, and as a fan of GAConf for ages, it's been exciting to be able to bring a talk today. So I hope to speak to you all soon, and thanks a lot.